Today's gospel reading is one that I find at once to be the most difficult, while at the same time being one of the most inspiring and hope-inducing of all the sayings of our Lord. In today's gospel reading, our Lord begins with that golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Here, in just a few words, our Lord has given to us a key that if we just tried to live it, to practice it, the amount of suffering, hurt, and brokenness in the world would be exponentially decreased. But our Lord goes on, he says, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? St. Silouan, the great 20th century Athonite father, whose feast day we celebrated this past Sunday, tells us that the love that we have for our enemies is the highest love that we are capable of. And not only that, but it measures our spiritual status. You want to know where you are on your path to the kingdom? Ask yourself how quick you are to embrace those who hate you, those who've hurt you. There's your answer. Why does he place so much emphasis on this love of enemies? Because this is a love that is truly free of any self-involvement. It's easy for us to love our friends because we benefit from it. We get something from it. How quickly that sort of love can turn into selfishness. But the love for the enemies is a love that is truly free. This love is also one that is spoken of again and again by our Lord. Forgive, forgive, forgive. This is one of the few things that is conditional. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. In fact, our Lord tells us that this is in many ways, this forgiveness of our enemies, this reconciliation is in many ways the one absolute thing that we need to attend to before we receive Holy Communion. He said if you were going to the temple bearing a gift, and you remember, you have a recollection of a break in a relationship with another, set down the gift and go and be reconciled. The ancient tradition, one that sadly I think has been set aside. In Greece, it used to be for many years, perhaps going back to apostolic times, that before one would receive communion, husbands would ask their wives, wives would ask their husbands, children would ask their parents and grandparents, forgive us, forgive us. In Asia Minor, they would go as far as to actually prostrate before a family member who had hurt them, to kiss the hand, at times the very hand that struck them, knowing that this is essential for us to be prepared to receive the Eucharist. Christ himself, who is forgiveness. St. Anastasius of Sinai, one of the great desert fathers, he said, there is no greater evil. There is no greater evil than remembrance of wrongs. He said every other sin we commit, gluttony, lust, hitting someone, whatever other sin we commit, he says it's done. In a moment it's done. But remembrance of wrong we carry with us. It eats away at us. We must forgive. We must go as far as to love our enemies. And this forgiveness, again, is something that we perhaps misunderstand. How often have I heard, I forgive this person, but I want nothing to do with them. I used to think that I was pretty good at forgiveness, but I realized I was just pretty good at avoiding people that I didn't get along with. The very etymology of forgiveness, sυγχώρηση, means to literally share a common space with someone. To forgive someone means to invite them into your life, to be part of your life, to share your life with them, no matter how much it hurts you. And if you come and you say, but Father, you don't know how much this person has hurt me, how much they've caused me to suffer, how can I possibly forgive them? What answer can I give but to point at the cross of our Christ? The very cross on which, as he was being nailed, he said, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Some have come to me, and I believe they're genuine when they say, Father, I've forgiven those who have hurt me. I have forgiven my enemies. And I can see that this is true in their life. They say, how can I forgive the one who has hurt someone who I love? How can a parent forgive the person who hurt their child? This is a truly difficult forgiveness. But the answer to this, I believe, is standing at the foot of the cross. Our Panagia, the Mother of the Lord, who despite the suffering that we inflicted upon her Son, has never for a moment ceased to intercede for us. And not only to intercede for us, but in today's feast day of the Holy Protection, to cover us and all of creation with the protecting veil of her love. We struggle to forgive. Look to the cross. Call upon the Mother of the Lord that she might give to us strength that we might forgive. Contemporary theologian Olivier Clement, he gives us some practical advice. He says, before we can even begin to speak of love, and in this case, love for our enemies, he said we must first have humility. We must humble ourselves. And he says we can't even speak of humility until we've respected the other. And to respect the other, we must be silent. We must listen to the other. We must, again, make space for the other. Love your enemies. A contemporary Romanian writer of the 20th century, and I'll add my favorite contemporary 20th century Romanian writer. He fled Romania during the communist period, came to Paris, became a very famous writer. And later in life, he actually was ordained a priest. But he tells a story. His name was Virgil. When he was a little boy, he asked his father to tell him the story about St. Virgil. And his father says, "My son, there is no St. Virgil." So the little boy, he got very upset. Says, "How can I not have a patron saint?" His father, who was a priest, saw how upset he was, and he says, "Well, the answer is simple. You must become the first St. Virgil." So he got really excited and he went to bed. And as he was laying in bed, he realized he didn't know how to become a saint. He didn't know what that meant. So he gets out of bed, he wakes up his father. Says, "Dad, what can I do? How do I become a saint?" Father says, perhaps prophetically, "Forgive your enemies." Virgil goes back to his bed, and he's laying there. All I have to do is forgive my enemies. Then he remembers he's a kid. He doesn't have any enemies to forgive. Now he can't become a saint, so he goes back to his dad, and he wakes him up, and he says, "Dad, I have no enemies." Father said, someday you will be hurt, and you will forgive. Many years later, when he was already himself an old man living in France, when the persecutions by the communists in Romania had lessened, he returned. He returned to his home village. He returned to say a memorial for his father who had been murdered by the communist police. And while he was there, a very old man shuffled up to him, unable to look him in the eye. And he said, I was the one who killed your father." And at that moment, Virgil realized, this is what my father knew. This is what my father prepared me for, to forgive. And he embraced his father's murderer. "But love your enemies," our Lord says, "and do good, and lend expecting nothing in return. And your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High." And here, my friends, is perhaps the greatest hope ever offered to us. For Christ, the Son of the Father, says of him, "For he is kind to the ungrateful and the selfish, he who is holy now and forever to the ages of ages."